This is episode 86 of our Road to Unicum, and today we review the Tier 10 German light tank, the Rheinmetall Panzerwagen. So this, aside from the newly introduced wheeled vehicle, this was the last of the Tier 10 light tanks that I had played. You can see the profile is huge relative to the Tier 9 Rhu 251. This is particularly problematic because this tank has paper-thin armor, so obviously it's like the size of a blimp. And while I think it might be a little bit smaller than the Sheridan, a tank of this size is really difficult to play. It's not like the T100 light tank, which has a super low profile. So I am platooned here with a couple other really skilled players, Bloop and no, this is Pat, so they're playing a Super Conqueror and Object 140, and I will show some of the footage from their perspective so you can get a handle on that. Now the first thing I'm checking is this ridge here, obviously over by the F0 area. It's a pretty popular spot with snipers, and when I did the initial loop, part of it was just to see if I would not only spot anyone with this tank's really good view range of 420, but also to see if I would get counter-spotted, my Sixth Sense would come on. It's worth noting that this tank's, because of the large profile, the camo rating is not very good. So even with full camo and then the camouflage paint, I'm looking at a concealment value of only around 31%, which is lower than, for example, the Tier 10 Rhu mediums, which are more of pancakes. So while this tank has always on camo, there are actually mediums that have a higher camo rating stationary than this tank does. Okay, so I've been waiting. This is about as long as I should wait, and then I do get spotted by this 13105 and immediately hit by an opposing bat chat. You need to be careful crossing over the ridges. What I probably should have done as soon as I decided to move forward was just get into the zero lane ditch, as that's the safest approach lane. This isn't obviously an all Tier 10 battle, so there are going to be plenty of tanks in here with really good view range. Obviously, Tier 10 battles are a really particular context. I mean, I do think one thing that I don't really like about Tier 10 is the extent of disparity between tanks, and it often feels like your ability to participate meaningfully is going to be based on which tank you queue up with, because the differentials, as you'll see, for example, Bloop is playing a Super Conqueror, which is very much the meta these days. And while this battle happened back in 2018, I've been actually saving this to make a video. There were just other tanks that I wanted to cover before this one, and I will tell you, I despise the Rheinmetall Panzerwagen with a burning passion. I found it extremely frustrating to play because it really does suck as a tank. I mean, it has, as is standard with other Tier 10 light tanks, really poor damage per minute, poor accuracy relative to other Tier 10 tanks, and it has really significant penetration drop off over distance. Now, we did kill that already right off the bat, which was huge, and so I'm not too worried about the fact that that Super Conqueror can actually see me, because I'll know if he's aiming in my direction. He's the only tank on their side, so this is the only moment where he could potentially have shot me. But there wasn't much of my tank peeking out between the gap and the rocks. And notice, I pushed straight down the zero lane, right? I was lit and I risked getting shot at. But it's definitely worth, in some cases, pushing forward to a position which affords you with a lot of flexibility. Like, for example, this is a fantastic position, K0, whether you're talking about defending from the southern part of the map, or in our case, we've pushed down and now I'm on the shelf because I've got flanking fire on these opposing tanks. And I just totally chewed up that Super Conqueror from the side. I mean, the thing is, the second that he saw that Pat and I had moved down towards H0, I0, J0 rather, he should have really backed off as hard as he could to get back into the ditch over by H6, because it really had his posture broken at that point. Now, I'm having to be careful here for a couple of reasons. Obviously, there really isn't a good target for me to shoot at the moment. However, this particular position will provide me with the first shot advantage over and over again, right? Because if I'm ever spotted and I'm really a little bit too far for that IS-7 to spot me, even after I fire, I can drop back. And you might be wondering why I don't move forward. A lot of people mistakenly think that light tanks should always be on the very front lines of the action. And obviously, in an all Tier 10 battle, that doesn't make a lot of sense, because this tank is just horrible for brawling. And you can see this 268 V4, this is, I believe, post-nerf. And we're still having trouble penetrating that tank frontally from range because the armor profile is so good. Usually, armor and speed are on opposing vectors, right? You either have high speed and low armor, or low armor and high speed. the 268 V4 has been broken even now if it was nerfed, because it has both meaningful armor and meaningful speed. Okay, there was a moment there where I actually fired high explosive. I must have dabbed the 3 key on accident. That wasn't my intention at all, and it's too bad, because the 268 V4, when he started to kind of face diagonally to the northeast, I should have had an easy penetration shot on the side. Bloop, by the way, has really worked his way up forward along the interior of the G line, which is the north side of this east-west ridge. So I'm going to show the battle from his perspective. His pushing up was very instrumental in helping us to put pressure on this particular flank. And then, using the good speed of this Rheinmetall Panzerwagen, I want to get behind the 268 V4. That was a little unfortunate. They already took that shot. I mean, I can't fault him. He got the kill. It's just that it happened to hit me and deal a little bit of damage and stun me, so I had to burn my first aid kit, which I preferred holding on to. And then that's a slightly inadvisable moment. I'm too close to the Object 140 to push up to this area. Now, the ironic thing is we're almost playing this as if we are now starting from the south spawn, right? But now it's been long enough that 140 can't spot me anymore, because I would have dropped from his vision. The RDs on both sides, by the way, have just played this terribly. Like, no map awareness. Our western flank was clearly going to fold, and our 261 and our GWE 100 should have pivoted to the eastern side of the map and probably driven all the way down south of the F lane, right? I'm not willing to yet abandon this position. It is possible that we can get capped out, but the thing is, these guys, I have flanking fire on them, right? So I've already racked up my 3rd kill of the match, and then that was a really nice tracking shot. I'm able to put down that heavy as well. So I've finished off, it looks like, 3 heavies so far. I can't remember what the 4th kill was. Oh, maybe no, it's been 4 heavies, because I got the IS-7 Super Conqueror, the Type 5 Heavy, and the Wheezy. Okay, obviously the rest of our team is dead, and we're trying to stay together as platoon mates. There's a couple obvious reasons why. Obviously we want to be able to out DPM anything that we might face. We're outnumbered by 2 tanks, but their FV 4005 and JPE 100 were playing very camp oriented, right? And so a lot of times players who are like that, it takes them a while for them to adjust to a new situation and push up, especially since we haven't been spotted for a while, right? So they're not, for all they know, we could still be in the southeastern corner of the map. What we want to try to do is pick off this 140. This is really the biggest threat to us from a vision perspective, as well as the Striv, but the 140 has a turret and he's pretty mobile. And I pick up this Striv 103B, and the side armor of that tank is super thin. So he's in a position now where it looks like he's still aiming off to my left. He's probably aiming off towards Pat, but that allows me to place that second shot and finish him off. Okay, so we've managed to claw this back now. It's a 3 versus 4, and Pat's playing the vision game appropriately. The only thing that he's showing is the top of his turret above this little ridge line, and periodically he's been peeking out only between bushes. So this is great. So he's dropped the 140 down to 1-shot territory. What I'm about to do, I realistically can only do once, because we don't know where their other tanks are, right? But what I'm going to try to do is get a cheeky flanking shot on that 140 and then finish him off. If he does that, then we're going to have a huge vision and mobility advantage. So that shot, unfortunately, does not hit, but he's able to snapshot me in return. And that's part of the problem with having a tank that is so paper, right, and has such a large profile. It's really difficult to drive this tank in a way which is safe. Like the T100 light tank, by comparison, is a flat pancake, and it has meaningful turret protection. You'll bounce a lot of shots off of the turret, whereas this tank really, this tank gets hits anywhere, especially with high explosive. The Rheinmetall Panzerwagen just implodes. So this, I really feel like this is like bringing a knife to a gunfight as far as other tier 10 tanks, and I struggle to even break 56% win rate in this. I think offhand, yeah, that is my lowest win rate among the tier 10 light tanks. And what I am doing here is partly just checking the railroad to make sure, hey, is it, did they try crossing the railroad tracks to get on the north side of it? And you can see Pat, he's staying with that magical trifecta there, a bush next to a rock with a good field of view, and it looks like, I think it was actually, might have been Bloop who spotted that T-57. That's part of the thing too, that a lot of the tier 10 heavies actually have pretty solid view range. In this case, Bloop is largely hull down and using that bush, so we're making the best use of this terrain. And then as I come up here, this T-57 has been pushing up really aggressively. I don't want to stop to take a shot because I am too shottable to their 140 and their T57, and obviously if their JPE or FE hit me, I will likely implode. But what I can do is just set up here for the first shot advantage. That shot bounces, but it's definitely worth doing. You know, the T57 doesn't have particularly good gun handling. I will say that is the one thing that the Rheinmetall Panzerwagen has, is a relatively fast aim time, and relative to other tier 10 tanks, pretty decent accuracy, right? So you've seen me snapshotting quite a bit in this match. And then check out what Bloop does here. So Bloop is potentially two-shottable, but more realistically, it's going to take 3 shots for this T57 to kill him. And while that T57's turret's turned sideways, I get a shot in. And Bloop has managed to bounce 2 out of 3 shots, right? And that was huge. He went in and jammed him. And remember, the T57 only has 8 degrees of gun depression, so it's not like some of the other, tier 10, or I should say American heavies, where it has, greater than 8 degrees of gun depression. And that, really, Bloop going in there and jamming that player was the right call in the moment, and it preserved Bloop's life, even though he's now one-shottable. But bouncing the 2 of the 4 shots was absolutely huge. Okay, that FE has dropped down below the ridge, and then you see I've already switched to high explosive, which allows me, the Rheinmetall Panzerwagen is part of a list of German light tanks between tiers 8 and 10 that have abnormally high penetration values. So this one has an AP a high explosive penetration value of, I believe, 102 millimeters. But beyond that, it's a great tool against obviously squishy paper targets. It's also really helpful against a tank like the 140, which has a really strong turret profile. It's hard to hit those small cupola, right? Instead, I can just splash anywhere along the top of the tank, and since it only had 22 hit points left, that finishes them off. Okay, and then it's so funny here again, with the good vision that tier 10 heavies have, Bloop had no problem spotting that FE, and he's well within Bloop's view range circle. And Pat has found their JPE 100. Remember what I said earlier about this player, along with the FE, being very camping oriented, right? The FE at least pushed up, even though I would say he should have come up with the T57, whereas this JPE took a long time. The JPE's only moved about 5 squares in the last 6 minutes, something like that, right? And so, he was essentially out of the battle. And, when we were playing, because the JP was so far away and without a relevant shot, and because we were hiding so that he couldn't see us. Notice, by the way, it's a little bit yellow, so back up just enough there so it turns green, so I'm more off to the side of this JP, and I'm just milking this, tracking damage shot for all that it's worth. And then what's sweet here is Bloop gets the kill, and that's like one of the, in my opinion, the rarest 2 medals to get in the game together are a crucial contribution, which is when a platoon gets 12 kills combined, along with Brothers in Arms, which means we each skilled at least 3 kills as well as stayed alive. And what Bloop does is, this was so interesting to see in the moment because I wasn't expecting it, but it was very much a smart thing to do. He's moving on the north side of this east-west ridge. As a matter of fact, in the countless battles that I've played on this steps map, I don't ever remember seeing another player do this. But what this allows Bloop to do is to move up and create a different firing angle on these opposing tanks, because Pat and I are both pushing toward, I'm pushing heavy toward that south corner, that K0 corner, right? Now, Bloop could only take 1 shot safely on that Super Conqueror, but the nice thing is he picks up that Batchat, who was at fairly high health, and you're going to see Bloop shoot at him a few more times. And then a really common thing you'll see Unicums do is just keep their gun active, right? Like a tank like the Super Conqueror actually has really good DPM, and so Bloop's not trying to fish for the perfect shots. He is trying to hit that antenna bar on the top of the 268 V4, but he's keeping his gun active, and that's a big reason why in this battle Bloop racks up over 7,000 damage. He's just keeping his gun hot. And the other really cool thing, since Bloop is here, the only way he could realistically be shot at is if he chooses to expose himself to the tanks that are further to the south. And notice that map awareness. He saw that the Batchat 25T was pushing up the gutter, and then as soon as that 25T was available in a shot, he went ahead and fired at him. Now that 13105 is one of the tanks that's holding us up positionally, so I'll talk about that in a minute, especially what Pat does. But what Bloop does, check this out, as soon as he hits that Batchat, he drives down a little bit into the flatter area, putting the ridge between them, so kind of getting more hull down, and then he's able to put that killing shot into the Batchat 25T. So the Batchat should not, because from where the Batchat's looking, all he can see is the front of Bloop's turret on the Super Conqueror and the upper hull, and those are all really strong areas. So, that Batchat had no business kind of trading there because he wasn't going to have a meaningful chance to penetrate, right? But the reverse was not the case. And then this IS-7 helped to make Bloop's choice here easy to go ahead and push up, because he got a full shot from the rear on the back of that turret, and that's an easy penetrating shot, and then I'm able to finish off that IS-7 in the crossfire. The one thing here, the only damage we have is that 13105. We're going to have to get rid of him because we can only push so far to the west before that 13105 is going to have easy shots. Like right here, you're going to see him tag Bloop in the rear of his tank. And then I think just watching that sequence right there, Bloop may have been better served by not trying to fire at that 13105 and just push across the gap and maybe eat one shot. It's one of those things where, Bloop ate 2 shots and dealt 1, but he advanced positionally to now get a rear shot on this 268 V4, which softened up the 268 V4 for me, and then the Artie to finish him off. And then right there, notice that Bloop takes 1 shot at the FE, but that's it. And that's because the FE was crossing a gap, and Bloop was able to minimize his exposure, but notice he doesn't push out for greedy second shot, especially with a tank like the FE. You have to assume that he has high explosive loaded. And I can't tell you the number of times, I've seen players all the way up to blue 4-shot against tanks and give up the first shot advantage against opponents just in the interest of trying to deal another shot. You can see here Bloop jamming this T-57, also pushing him to the side, which creates motion for that tank and can screw up the reticle. It can induce bloom on the target. Right, but so many times, I was talking to some players, and I've been asked this a lot, what's the difference between a blue and a purple? And a blue person is a person who is, let's say, competent and knowledgeable about the game in general, right? So they know the maps, they know the tanks, they know penetration mechanics, camo mechanics, where to go, where not to go on maps in general, right? The big difference, in my opinion, between a Unicum and especially Super Unicum and the blue players is the ability to read the map, the ability to create situations, and most importantly, not just read the map in the present, right? A blue player can read that and understand where there are gaps and opportunities. A Unicum, and especially Super Unicum, can often accurately predict what will happen 30 to 60 seconds out, sometimes even longer, and then basically anticipate situations before they arise and take the appropriate action in light of those likely to happen events. Right, and so that's kind of what you saw us do a lot of within this map and Pat's doing a great job of this. He's staying along the red line, not red line chai snapping, but rather because there's just the tiniest of ridges in front of him, which allows his pancake tank to largely stay hull down, right? And so if the only thing that's exposed is his turret, his turret is really, really strong, and it's a hard shot from distance to penetrate one of those cupolas on the top of his tank. It's a super low percentage shot. Notice that, Pat did take some damage when making the crossing over here. In general, you don't want to rush to a forward position unless it gives you a position of great strength, right? So, we both crossed over this way and got shot once each making the crossing, but it's totally worth it because of where we now are, right? What I tend to see players do, and this includes blues, is often moving up to a position giving up too much to try to get a positional advantage, and so you don't want to bleed your hit points foolishly, right? That's the one resource that you cannot get back. And so Pat here is trying to move up. What's interesting is he can't actually climb up the slope that's directly to his south. So I think he was coming up here hoping to be able to work his way over to that 13105. The thing that's slightly precarious about this position is that 268 V4 can see a good deal of Pat's hull, and the way the ground is shaped here, there's not necessarily a whole lot that he could do about it. So the 268 V4, in my opinion, should be firing on Pat. It's the best target for him to shoot at, and it would allow him to maintain his frontal facing. But what Pat does is he goes ahead and just realizes at some point he's got to go. So he makes the crossing over to this 105. Remember that 105 had shot twice at Bloop, right? So he has at most 1 shot left in his clip, and then the 105's posture immediately tells Pat that this guy is giving himself up, right? He's not trying to fight back. And even if he had even if he fired that 1 shot at Pat, there's no way he can finish him off. So the 3 of us combined for about 16,000 damage and 12 kills. So we actually out-damaged the other 12 members of our team, right? And again, in my mind, the crucial contribution with Brothers in Arms, the rarest platoon medal to get in the game. Okay, so I am giving away an HWK 30 to the first person who is a North America player posts their North America in-game name along with being a current subscriber to my channel. So I will pin the person who wins the tank just so the rest of you don't have to waste your time. And then I also have a few rental codes to give away for HWK30, so you can find those. I'll post a couple of those free rental codes tonight, and then a couple more tomorrow, just to spread out the time where those codes are being made available. So let me know what you think about this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will talk to you guys soon. Take care.